Previously on the Cannondale SuperV Restomod project, we took this year 2000 Cannondale SuperV with a slightly kooky build on it. It had some odd stuff, a nice red flight titanium saddle, but it doesn't really match the rest of the frame. It had a Dior Alex XT combo chain set and a really nice D521 wheel set with IRC tyres. It's nice. But yeah, we stripped it back to a bare frame and had a bit of a fight with the particularly peculiar X-like click-on seat post, which is really nice but not staying on this build. Now it's time to get it built up into a Restomod and make it cool once again. So here's where we left off from the last video. We're stripped back to a raw frame. The first thing I want to do is give the bike a bit of a polish and detail because it looks a bit kind of tarnished and scruffy. If you look up close, it's not got great luster on it. I'm not going to try and make this bike perfect in any way. It's definitely want to be usable. It's got a lot of scratches and ripped decals, and it's just a bit dirty overall. It's not bad in any way, but I really want to just tidy it up whilst it's at a raw frame and see what we can do to improve the luster of the bike. So we're going to give it a good polish. One thing I would like to do is get into the head shock, but I don't have any yellow zip ties. I know it sounds stupid, but it seems to work fine at the moment. So I'm going to leave the head shock completely as it is. I'm not going to service it at this point in time. It feels fine operationally. I'll do it at a later date. But basically, because I can't find any yellow zip ties to re-secure the boot, and those boots are super rare in that yellow colour as well, so I'm very precautious about it. So I'm going to start off this sort of strip down in detail but giving it a good wash, and I'm going to wash down this suspension boot at the front for the head shock really thoroughly and gently, more importantly. So here's me, I'm squirting some automotive detail over it, just absolutely blasting it effectively just to get rid of any dust and grime from it. And I'm using a sort of a wash mitt because they're super soft and lift dirt really well. So I'm just using that to sort of brush it off and try to get it as clean as possible. I give the bike a clean at the same time. So this bike's pretty tarnished, and I'm going to give it the T-cut treatment as like the first attempt to remove all the scratches. I'm going to montage through this sort of polishing and detailing process. It's pretty similar, you've seen it on many of my other builds before, but the process of polish is generally apply in little swirly circular motions just to try to sort of polish it in. Give it a few moments to sort of haze off and become less liquidy and into sort of a drying phase, then buff it off with a clean cloth. So after the first round I thought it was pretty good. There's still a lot of swirls in the frame though, so let's give it a round two and see what it looks like after that, I think. So after the second round of the T-cut, I think generally the bike is looking a lot more improved. There's a bit more luster to the frame. I'm just holding up my sort of daylight light I use in my garage here to film things with, to sort of cause some reflections, and it's getting quite shiny. There's still a lot of swirls and bad marks in the frame, but it's getting better for sure. One thing I did notice is some of the stickers are under the lacquer on this frame and some are over, so it's something we have to bear in mind when polishing. So next phase is I'm going to use this Meguiar's scratch remover because there's some quite deep scratches on the sort of the V of the Super V top tube there, if you want to call it a top tube or seat mast. So I want to give it a best attempt at polishing those off, and I think that removed most of them, but there's some sort of embedded deep scratches just by that bottle cage mount that I can't get rid of. I think you probably could if you had sort of a proper polishing machine, like a DA polisher, but to me it's too far gone. And at this point I decided a lot of these decals are looking faded and tatty. So this is strange because some of the decals are under the lacquer and some are over. So what I think, and looking at the history of the Super V, happened is the very late models, the 99 and year 2000s, had a swing arm that was failing on them. It kept cracking. From what I can tell, and they put the swing arm off of the Raven and or the Jekyll onto the last of the Super Vs, and that's the CAD4 Super V swing arm. So that's where the CAD4 comes from. I didn't really like that big list of chopping parts on the bike. I know it looked very team, but they look scruffy, and I think when I polished them they started lifting some of the yellow, so I decided to remove all the decals that weren't under the lacquer on this bike. A bit controversial for some, I'm sure, but it's not what I liked. I wanted to keep it cleaner. So the last round of sort of cleaning up the bike, I'm going to use some of the Super Glim Super Resin polish. This is my favourite product for bikes. It's really like makes the bike pop, I think. It's a really good product. I can't recommend it enough. It's not super expensive. So it's a polish and it's got some sort of fillers in it, so it fills in small scratches, and I think it really makes the luster of the bike pop really well. And to seal that in, I like to use some of this Turtle Wax ceramic sealant, spray on sort of wax sealant. It's not the best stuff in the world. Actually, I don't like it on cars, but on the bike it really works really well. So yeah, here's the sort of finished, polished up product. As you can see, it's a lot more shiny for sure. There's still a lot of scratches in it, and I'm okay with that. It's not going to be a perfect sort of build. Like that big scratch in the Cannondale there is, unless I wanted to touch it in, I don't think there's anything I could do about that. But overall, I'm fairly happy with it, and it's going to be a usable used bike, so I'm not super worried about making it perfect. So the first thing we're going to do on the build is remove this X-like click-on seat post for a few reasons. A, I want to cut it down, and B, the reach I want to reduce on this bike. So I'm going to swap the seat post from a Killer V to the Super V, do a bit of a switcheroony. So this has a BX branded inline seat post, so that will reduce the reach on the Super V, because it's an extra large. The height's right, but the reach is massive. So I swapped this over to the Killer V, which is a kind of a period correct build, and I think it looks mint on this build. It makes perfect sense in my mind, because I'm going to cut down the Brand X seat post, which is now in the Super V. It gets complicated. Unlike most bikes, you can't get this bike into a work stand without a seat post on it, so the seat post is kind of integral to working on this bike. So yeah, the Brand X seat post is installed, and with that installed we can put the bike into my work stand. This bike came with some older Hope brakes, but I'm going to do an upgrade to some slightly more modern year 2000-esque Hope brakes. So I'm going to swap the rotors over because they're the wrong size currently. So I can put in a 160 at the back, 180 at the front. And whilst I'm down here servicing the wheels, I'm going to repair the XT decal, which is kind of like hanging it off a bit. Just a dab of super glue there on this will make it look good again. Just trying to hold it in place with a pen, just trying not to get super glue on my fingers, but it wasn't working, so super glue on my fingers. And yeah, let's get this last rotor installed. I always use a bit of thread lock on my rotor bolts because I've had them come out and pass whilst in Morzine of all places, so always thread lock your rotors. With that done, we can grease up the free hub body here. It's always a good idea to grease these up. It's kind of like a win-win situation where it's hard not to. I couldn't recommend not greasing up your free hub body just because generally there's a mix of materials here. And the group set I was planning on fitting on this bike is this Dior 10-speed system, but I was debating whether I should do Dior or Microshift. I got both in stock at the moment, in stock in parts. So yeah, I'm going to go for this Dior system initially, but we run into a problem later. I'll explain when we come across it. So yeah, I fit this 1146 cassette to the bike. And with that done, we can get the wheels installed and start looking at the brakes. So when I bought this bike, it had the original Hope hydraulic brakes fitted to it, I think, or very close to the original. I suspect they're from 1996, and there's a lot of change at this point in the world of disc brakes. It gets confusing fast, trust me. But the brakes I'm going to fit are a much later model. The calipers themselves on fitting are actually pretty similar, but it's where the lever is the big change. So what I'm doing is changing from a Hope brake from about 96 to a Hope brake from about 2001-2002, which would be the Hope Mini brake system at that point in time. So a 2-piston caliper mixed with a nice sort of open mini lever, which is black and looks a bit more sleek, so we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, fitting these brakes is a pain in the butt. It's much nicer now with the post mount systems. The ISO standard is just a bit rubbish. So this bike wasn't really designed for hydraulic cable routing in mind, I don't think. It's not ideal. So the rear end's fine. It's actually got no V-brake bosses, which is quite interesting. But the actual main frame doesn't have any hydraulic routing. Luckily it comes with hydraulic brakes on it, so it had these little thingamajigs, I don't know what they're called, to adapt the cable routing to a hydraulic system. So to sort of montaging this through, you have to kind of wind them into the frame, clip the brake in position. It's again repeat the same process on the front here with trial and error of fitting shims to get it to spin freely. And with all that done, we can get a bottom bracket installed. The bottom bracket I'm going for is a Nukeproof Horizon GXP or GXP model. Just making sure it's really greased up and put into the frame here to prevent any sort of future problems with getting the bottom bracket out of the frame. It shouldn't be too bad, it's aluminium on aluminium, should be fine. Moving on to the drive side here. Let's apply a liberal coating of grease to the threads to prevent any future problems and get it installed into the frame. And then we can just wipe off all the excess grease we just unnecessarily splodged everywhere. I think it's better to go overboard with this than it is to go underboard. It shouldn't be too bad. It's aluminium on aluminium on this bike. It shouldn't have any galvanic problems corroding together, but we can just be on the safe side and make life easier for anybody in the future that takes this bottom bracket out. Now I want to talk a bit about chainrings now. There's two things to consider when fitting a chainring to a full suspension bike, a single pivot particularly, is the chain ring should roughly line up with the pivot position. So this is a 32 tooth eagle chainring on this bike and it lines up quite well. Problem is it's a boost chainring and the chain line is really close to the end of the cassette, so when you're in the easiest gear it's going to be cross chaining like mad and sounding very grumpy at you. So yeah, what I need to do is get a non-boost chainring, so a +6 offset chainring on this bike to move that chain towards the center of the cassette in its sort of neutral position. This currently would kind of work, it wouldn't be too bad, but if you popped it into the low range gears like the big 46 there, it's going to be really grumpy at you. It's going to be making popping and pinging sounds, especially when you're at high torque and climbing. It's not going to like it at all. So what I need to do is offset the chainring with a +6 chainring, which will realign the chain line and make it less grumpy. I've got this 34 tooth +6 non-boost chainring in my parts bin, so this is what I'm going to use. It might be a little bit too big for the frame. It might cause the suspension to bob a bit in the lower end of the gear range. Something I'm going to have to try out and potentially have to buy a smaller chainring for it in the future if I want it to like pedal really well. But basically, yeah, try to align your chainring with the main suspension pivot. And the caveat to that, that only works on single pivot bikes. If you've got like an FSR link, it's going to get complicated fast. So yeah, on this bike, I think a 30 or 32 would be optimum for pedaling, but a 34 might be able to squeak it in and make it perform. Moving on to the stem now, I wanted to remove this original Cannondale stem. It's a bit too angled for me, either up is too low or too high. And it's a bit too long for the reach, so I couldn't quite get it right. And it was one of the main blockers for this build, is getting hold of this reserve engineering stem, which is 60mm in length, and you know, it fits the Cannondale head shock system, which is a particular strange size. It's a 1.5 sit, so bigger than anything else. so you have to get these special Cannondale spec stems for the bike. Bars, for now I'm just going to fit these black nuke proof bars. I'm not entirely sure what I wanted to do at bars at this point in time. Until I got the bike on the ground and the seat set for my right height, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I'm going to fit them for now just to fit everything else around. These are probably too wide. I would cut them down. They're 800 wide at the moment, so yeah, really whoppatrons, really wide bars. So yeah, too wide really for the sort of intended use. I think 800 is a bit too wide for me anyhow. But yeah, I'm going to just fit them and get all the controls fitted to feel it out basically. Once the bike's on the ground, I like to just adjust things and get everything lined up as I like with my seat at my right height, and in the work stand I can't do this. So yeah, it's just a case of getting all the parts fitted to the bike, then do the fine fettling once the bike's on the ground for me. So everything goes on the bars and they're fitted loosely. And this is where I start running into problems with the build. I wanted to fit this Dior 10-speed shifter with the little window on it, but I couldn't quite get it to work right with a Hope mini lever system. A few issues here actually. So if I fit it this way around, I can't quite get the lever paddles into the right place because I want to run the brake sort of inboard to have one finger brake in it. It's quite a long lever. And if I do that, the shifter paddles get really quite far away from where my fingers want to be. So ideally I want to run the brake shifter on the other side of the brake lever, sort of the outside of it. So this is where it starts going wrong, and once I start nipping the bolts up to sort of position them correctly, I run into the problem that the sort of window and the master cylinder don't like to be in the same place, and it kind of constrains the position of the shifter to be too vertical almost. So at this point in time I thought, forget about it, let's go back and switch out the system to the Microshift system I was already considering. So yeah, pulling the lever off there, and I can position the Microshift shifter in the sort of outboard position, so I get the one finger brake in and the paddles in the right place, for where I like it anyhow. I mean, it's not quite usual this way around, but for me it works with these sort of long lever blades. So the next thing to do is switch out the cassette. So it had this Dior 10-speed cassette on it. It would have worked fine, but I've got, you know, the entire Microshift system. So I'm putting this 11 to 48 cassette on here, and you know what, I think the black colour kind of matches the build of the bike as well, to be honest. This system was originally fitted to my Marin Bolinas Ridge build, I'll link that above, but I'm going to do some work on that, and I want to convert it more into sort of a shopper town bike. So look out for that in the future maybe. I'm not decided if I'm going to put that one up on the channel yet, because it's going to be a bit experimental. Yeah, so yeah, we're switching this system to a slightly used Microshift system, effectively. With the group set kind of decided on, fit some tyres, and naturally we're going to go for Billy Bonkers. Wait, it didn't, the YouTube magic didn't work there. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3, go. The YouTube magic for tyre fitting is not working today. The Cannondale won't take the Billy Bonkers for some reason. I mean, what is it doing? It's just saying no. The Cannondale doesn't want Billy Bonkers. What is going on? It's saying look at the past and try this one for size. Oh yeah, we're going for the Panaracer Fire XC Pros just because they have the yellow stripe around the outside. With the wheels and tyres fitted, let's get the Microshift Advent X rear clutch mech installed on this bike. I'm kind of seeing how this build's looking now. It's looking pretty cool with all the black parts in my mind. I quite like these Advent X derailleurs, but they're getting a little strange to get hold of in the UK now. They used to get hold of them from Wiggle and Chain Reaction. Obviously with that company going bust and being owned by the Fraser Group now, kind of UK shop talk here, they don't seem to support them anymore, so I'm not sure where you can get spares from. And as you can see, the chain line is slightly on or above the main pivot there, so it might bob in the low gears. Ideally I think 32 is the right size chainring for this, so I might have to look at getting a 32 tooth chainring in the future. Right, one pain in the butt part here was this little extra short cable reach. I didn't film the cabling because it's really boring and a pain in the bum to film. But this little bit of cable here is a real pain in the bum because you have to adjust the B tension on the bike, which shortens the length of the cable. So it's a case of tweaking and trimming off 5mm of cable at a time to get it to fit perfectly. Pedals I'm going to go for on this bike are these Nuke-proof Neutron pedals, plastic ones. Pick these up in the fire sale from Nuke-proof for like a tenner. Perfect for this build, yellow. Let's get those installed. Does anybody actually torque up their pedals? This is just a general question. I've never seen anybody use a torque wrench on their pedals before. But yeah, I just put them in with an Allen key. It's probably one area I don't consider torquing on my bike. I mean, I play with pedals quite a lot. They come on and come off. But yeah, on this build, I just put them on with the Allen key and hand tightened them to FT. So nice yellow pedals on the build. And with that, let's tune the gears in, a bit of gear tunage. I'm still not sure the B tension's quite right on this clutch rear mech. It's almost like the chain's too short, but it's correct to the Microshift specification. It's a little strange, I think. Let's talk about saddles now. I had two saddles I was contemplating. I have this sort of grey Selle Italia Eco Weird saddle in my sort of parts bin. I thought it might match up with the rims and shock quite well, but I kind of chickened out and just went for this black WTB bolt saddle in the end. I just think it's less controversial. Ideally I would have liked to got a yellow saddle, but I can't seem to find one quite right for the build. So yeah, let's get this WTB saddle installed. Once it's installed, it's not really finished, it's just getting it in position. One thing I wanted to do is get the saddle at the right height for me and trim off any excess seat post that was sticking through the frame, because that looks really ugly to me. So it's one of the sort of key things. So I scribed a line onto the seat post using a pick here, and then I used a pipe cutter to trim the seat post to roughly the right sort of length for me, just to hide the post and not have this excess bit of post poking out the bottom ready to smash into the shock. My pipe cutter is starting to get a bit blunt. I think I need to get a new wheel for it, or a new pipe cutter, because the burr is creating quite big now, and it actually took a little while to chew its way through this seat post. Last time I used it was on a fork and it went for it fine, so maybe it's dulled the sharp cutting edge. So with that done, I can grease up the seat post and get it inserted in the frame, and then set the saddle to the right height, which for me is about 76 centimeters. I then decided that these bars were too low and too wide, so I wanted to switch to these other riser bars I have. They're brand X ones. They're 15mm rise, I think. And I did something stupid in the fire sale for wiggle chain reaction. I picked up two sets of yellow grips. I got some DMR Def grips, and I picked up these Ergon grips. So I've not used Ergon grips before, so let's go for those. Just a quick install. They're quite direction specific, but obviously they're yellow and they look mint on this build. I think either or could have worked really well. I'll keep the other yellow ones for another build in the future, which I've got another yellow build coming up. So with those installed, I actually picked up this great tip from Bike Shed Boy. If you've not seen his channel, go check it out, give him a subscribe. Great stuff on his channel, and he does some great builds. So yeah, go check out Bike Shed Boy on YouTube. It has to cling film the grips before whilst you're playing around and building the bike, to stop you getting mucky greasy fingerprints all over your bike, because you're going to touch these parts and you don't want to get grease stains on these sort of brightly coloured bits. So yeah, get some cling film over your saddles if they're brightly coloured, or grips, whilst you're servicing and tinkering with your bike with potentially dirty hands. Yeah, so thanks for that tip, Bike Shed Boy. I love it. So yeah, go over to his channel and check it out. And yeah, this is me just talking down all the sort of controls on the front of the bike. onto the final bits of the build now. I needed a way to secure this hose to the fork. It's not simple on this bike because there's no hose routing. It's almost designed for V-brake. So I've done this sort of double cable tie loop trick around the front here. It was kind of similar when I got the bike. So you secure one cable tie around the post mount there, and a second one sort of perpendicular to that one to like loop it in the direction you did it. So it's kind of a weird little hack there. And I use my favourite like hack using a nail clipper to trim off any cable ties, because it trims them nice and smooth and you don't get any scratchy cutty points on them, most importantly. So yeah, that's a great little hack for you there if you've not used it before. Can't recommend it enough. One thing I was considering was using a yellow bottle cage on this build, but I decided not to in the end. This bottle cage is a bit too beat up. It does match the colour quite nicely, but it's starting to flake, and to be honest, I think Super Vs with bottle cages look a bit weird because they're kind of in strange places, to be honest, a bit weird. So yeah, and one last final touch I wanted to do was I had to get a Volvo logo on here. It's the Cannondale Volvo logo colours, so I might have gone too big with this Volvo logo. Let me know in the comments if you think I should downsize it a bit. I've done this on my little Cricut label printer. I think I might have gone too big. I need to sort of downscale it by about a third, but it's only in retrospect. I can see that now. Yeah, but the classic Volvo Cannondale. I couldn't resist not having a Volvo logo on this bike. It seems like the right thing to do now with the sort of shopping list of parts that were on this side of the bike anyhow. Yeah, so maybe in the future I'll downsize that Volvo logo a little bit. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you would do. Would you have kept it, or would you would you not put a fake sort of Volvo logo onto the bike? I couldn't resist it myself. So with that done, let's go outside and stare at it. So the first ride didn't really go to plan, as part of the brake friction material came off the pad backing here. So yeah, the brake was squealing quite badly, and then I had to do some trail side sort of preventative maintenance because yeah, as you can see, the friction material came away from the backing pad there. Not ideal. But overall, I'm like super stoked with the bike. I'm actually really happy the way it come out overall. I think I need to tone down the Volvo logo to be a bit smaller by about 30%, I reckon, a bit more subtle on the bike. But overall, I'm really stoked with it. I think I'm going to change the chainring to a smaller size, but other than that, it's pretty much perfect in my mind. So yeah, there we have it. Thanks for watching if you got this far, and hopefully this like drum and bass track I found on the audio part of YouTube isn't too much for you all you. Thanks for watching this one, and hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.